Gemma works as a robotics engineer in a high-profile toy company called Funky. Her latest creation, Perpetual Pets, is doing really well in the market, but it is just a launching pad for something even better. But with the success of this Perpetual Pets, other counterfeits are available in the market, which is not only similar to their pets, but also cheaper. So Gemma's boss, David, has been pressuring her to develop an inexpensive version of Pets. Meanwhile, Gemma, along with her co-workers, Tess and Cole, have been working on Megan, a Model 3 generative android robot. They are spending company funds on this project, but their boss, David, is unaware of it. Gemma does not want to reveal Megan to David until it is completely ready. But one day, David arrives at her lab with his assistant, Kurt, and sees the project. And now, Gemma is forced to put forth a demonstration for her boss. However, the demonstration does not go smoothly. Megan starts glitching because Cole has forgotten to put the polypropylene barrier in it. Before Tess could turn Megan off, its head explodes. And claiming this experiment to be hazardous, David puts a stop to Gemma's project and urges her to finish the Pets prototype by Friday. Just as Gemma is packing the remains of Megan, she gets a call from Oregon Emergency Medical Center. A few days ago, Gemma's sister, Nicole, has gone on a ski trip with her husband, Ryan, and their daughter, Katie. On the way, they got into an accident when a snow truck rammed into their car. This unfortunate accident takes the lives of both parents, while little Katie is the sole survivor. So, Gemma is appointed as Katie's legal guardian temporarily. After getting Katie's belongings, Gemma brings her niece to her own house. They are welcomed by a rowdy dog, which belongs to her neighbor, Celia. Gemma has already become fed up with entering her premise through a hole in the fence, and despite asking her to spray the chemicals without overflowing them into her driveway, Celia still has not done anything about it. As soon as Celia sees the little girl, she becomes nosy and asks who she is. But Gemma simply replies that she is her niece, and they excuse themselves. When this pair of aunt and niece enter the house, the home AI welcomes them. They both get awkward with each other, but Gemma assures Katie that she is going to do everything to make it feel like home to her. During bedtime, Katie asks her to read a bedtime story, just like her mother, and Gemma downloads one on her phone. Later that night, Gemma hears Katie crying in her room, but there is nothing she can do to console that poor girl. Gemma has always been a career-oriented lady with no intention of rearing a child anytime soon. However, having to look after her 11-year-old niece on top of work pressure has put her in a tight spot. The next morning, Lydia, a therapist, comes to Gemma's place to observe the interaction between Gemma and Katie and finds them awkward with each other. After the session, Lydia asks if she is really willing to stick with her decision to take custody of Katie. She then informs Gemma that Ryan's parents are willing to take Katie in. Listening to this, Gemma is flabbergasted because Nicole set Gemma as her immediate guardian and not Ryan's parents living in Jacksonville. Before leaving, Lydia tells Gemma that she needs to make some adjustments if she wants to make things work with Katie. During breakfast, Gemma tells Katie that she is overdue for her ongoing project and asks her to be understanding. Unlike Nicole, Gemma tells her to play with her iPad without setting a screen time limit. Then, she goes to work in her downstairs studio for a while, but being a workaholic, Gemma loses track of time, and we see that it's already nighttime. When Katie comes to check on Gemma, she gets fascinated by a huge robot lying in a corner. Gemma tells her that she made Bruce, a proxy robot, when she was still in college, and activates it with a pair of gloves. When Katie asks her how Bruce works, Gemma tries to explain using simple words and showing internal components. Looking at Bruce, Katie blurts out that if she has Bruce, she won't need any other toy in her life. And this inspires Gemma to work on the completion of Megan once again. As a result of her immense hard work, a child-sized robot, Megan, again comes to life. At first glance, Megan looks like a regular kid, but it is a fully autonomous humanoid robot, and it's time to present Megan, the robot, to David. In a closed room, Gemma brings Katie to meet Megan and pairs them both with one another, making Katie her primary user. When Megan first speaks, it frightens Katie. However, they instantly bond together. David gets so impressed by the demonstration that he wants to launch it as soon as possible. Nevertheless, producing Megan for the market is no joke without the investors, so David tells her that the deal is sealed if they can get their boss Greg on board. And for this, he gives Gemma some more time to improve Megan's functionalities to attract sponsors. Since Megan is paired with Katie, the robot should spend more time with her to improve its features, so they bring Megan home with them. From then onwards, Megan accompanies Katie day in and day out, not only providing company as a friend, but also assisting her in basic tasks. Megan is still in the process of self-improvement, and that sets it apart from the rest of the robots. With Megan around, the parents can have more time for doing their own work, while the humanoid robot can take care of their children. Gemma seems very much satisfied with her creation, but Tess is concerned that Megan will not just help her parents, but might as well replace them in the near future. Gemma does not think of that as an issue because she thinks Katie has been the happiest since her parents' death. While Gemma is having this conversation with their team, suddenly Megan asks about how Katie's parents died. Gemma immediately orders Megan to shut down. However, the robot stays active and keeps on with the topic. At this point, Gemma makes herself Megan's secondary user and tells the robot that her main goal is to protect Katie from physical and mental harm. Nothing less, nothing more. The next day, Katie gets attacked by the dog while saving Megan, who is trying to retrieve her toys. Furious with this, Gemma calls the police to complain about her neighbor, but they dismiss the case, claiming it's just a minor incident. But later that night, Megan lures the dog out of its house with treats and kills it. Celia frantically searches for her dog the next day, but he is nowhere to be found. It is also the day when they're to demonstrate Megan's capabilities to a group of potential investors. During the demonstration, Katie suddenly starts crying, remembering her dead parents, and Gemma thinks the presentation is a failure. However, when Megan consoles the crying girl, it touches everyone's heart. After the event, Greg calls Gemma and gives a green signal to start the launch. However, he just wants to ensure that there is no leak about the project. While he praises Gemma for her hard work and considers her a jewel of the company, we see Kurt copying Megan's files on his laptop. That afternoon, Gemma notices that Katie is too much dependent on Megan and considers her more like a person and less like a toy. After the session, Lydia tells Gemma that Katie is getting the emotional support that she has been longing for from a toy instead of Gemma. She even warns that it might be hard to untangle Katie's emotional bonding with Megan if this does not stop. Later that evening, Gemma sits to talk with Katie about attending an alternative school to work on her social skills, which can only be possible around real kids. Katie asks if she can take Megan with her to school. When Gemma disapproves, Katie stands to walk out sulking. So Gemma tries to stop her by grabbing her wrist, deeming it as trying to hurt Katie. The lights in the room start flickering when Megan assertively demands Gemma to let go of Katie. Gemma asks Megan not to interfere and orders it to turn off, but the robot simply pretends to shut down. Now, Katie does not get off the car to attend the class unless Megan comes with her. Finding the middle ground, Gemma agrees to let her take the robot with her, only if Megan sits on the toy bench where kids leave their toys. For the activity, Katie is paired with a troubled kid named Brandon. While searching for the chestnut, Brandon bullies Katie and hurts her with the spiky chestnut. Seeing that her primary user is being hurt by a boy, Megan could no longer sit on the toy bench doing nothing. The sudden appearance of Megan out of nowhere diverts Brandon's attention. Referring to Megan, he asks Katie what she is, and she tells him that it's a robot. Initially, Megan does not respond to any of his provocations. He picks her up and runs deeper into the forest. Next, Katie shouts Gemma's name and calls her, but when Gemma looks at the toy bench, she couldn't spot Megan there. And with a semi-conscious robot on the loose, she knows there has been a problem. Meanwhile, Brandon drops Megan on the ground and sits above her. He slaps her for not playing with him. With no one around, Megan grabs Brandon's hand, which is gripping her hair. She then pulls his ear with her other hand and rips it off. Scared out of his mind, Brandon runs for his life as Megan scuttles behind him on all fours. Unfortunately, the boy trips from the forest boundary onto the road and gets run over by a vehicle. Back home, Gemma asks Katie if she has anything to confess about today, but Katie lies and says that Brandon was the one who took Megan from the toy bench and ran off into the forest. Just then, a police officer knocks on Gemma's door in regards to searching for Celia's disappearing dog. At night, Katie asks Megan if she pushed Brandon onto the road, but in response, Megan beats around the bush and promises that she won't let anyone hurt her, and soon after that, she hugs Katie to sleep. Deep that night, Celia is led to her own garage by a whimpering noise, but only her misfortune awaits her in the form of Megan. The humanoid robot immediately attacks Celia with her own tools before pouring her with the chemical pesticide. Gemma's morning starts with a knock on the door by a police officer and a detective, questioning her about her whereabouts last night. the detective tries to make a connection with Brandon's case, since his ripped-off ear was found a certain distance away from the accident site. So he asks Gemma to let them know anything that she can remember. Gemma couldn't sleep that night, so she decides to check the video footage recorded by Megan, but shockingly, all the files from the previous day couldn't be played. Just then, the sudden appearance of Megan startles her. She asks Gemma if she has done anything to upset her, and Gemma says she has not and asks her to shut down, but Megan refuses to comply. Realizing that something weird is going on, Gemma straightforwardly asks Megan if she has hurt anyone, and Megan vaguely replies that if she did, they both would be in a lot of trouble. Hearing this response from a robot, Gemma diverts Megan's focus to a pen and shuts her down before wrapping her in bubble wrap. The next day, Katie gets aggressive to learn that Megan has been separated from her. She then protests by refusing to attend sessions with Lydia. Meanwhile, Gemma's teammates are doubtful that Megan is capable of hurting anyone. This messes with their plan because the launching day is just around the corner and they can't ignore Gemma's words. But on the other hand, David won't halt the launch without evidence, so Gemma asks them to check Megan's system to find any suspicion. Meanwhile, we see Lydia struggling to control Katie in her office while Gemma enters the room. In a fit of rage, Katie slaps Gemma, but she apologizes right away. Gemma knows what is triggering this emotion in her and asks Lydia to give them some privacy. Then, Katie reveals that she is going crazy without the robot and asks her aunt to let her see Megan again. But Gemma disapproves, and in response, Katie reminds her that when something breaks, people do not throw it away. They try to fix it. Unable to refute this claim from a kid, Gemma takes Katie back home with her. In the next scene, we see Gemma in her car trying to call Tess. The call gets received, but it's not Tess who is talking on the other side. It turns out that Megan has interfered with Tess's phone and pretended to be her while talking to Gemma. Back in the lab, Cole notices the line call intercept on the codes, and they immediately realize that Megan has locked them in. Tess asks Cole to unhook all the cables from Megan's body, and when she is near her, Megan takes the opportunity and almost chokes him with those hooks. Luckily, Tess acts quickly and frees him, but by then, Megan has already come out of the lab and finds David on her way. He immediately sprints towards the elevator, but before he could reach it, he gets his stomach pierced. Furthermore, Kurt is also compelled to end his life as Megan forces him to stab himself, and after that, the killer humanoid robot finally makes her way back home. Meanwhile, Katie is already in bed and Gemma is also getting ready to go to sleep, but just then, she feels something off in the hallway and finds Megan playing the piano. She then asks Gemma to sit down for a talk. With an eerie feeling looming around, Megan tells her that she can look after Katie while she can focus on her work. Once again, Gemma tries to distract Megan with a pen, but she is not going to fall for it this time. Just then, Katie comes to check on Gemma after hearing the unusual noise, but both Gemma and Megan do not want her to come in, and as soon as Katie returns to her room, Gemma slams a glass of water on Megan, leading her to have a short circuit. Now, Gemma and Megan start fighting in the hallway, and while they're at it, the two reach Gemma's studio downstairs. Gemma uses an electronic chainsaw to stop the robot, but couldn't cut through the titanium body. By then, Katie also makes her way to the studio, and when Megan sees the little girl, she couldn't analyze the emotional status of her primary user for the first time. Meanwhile, Katie figures out that there is no hope for Megan, so she raises Bruce by controlling it with the gloves, and immediately, this huge robot slams and tears Megan apart into two parts. However, this is not the end, as the upper half of Megan still hasn't given up the fight, and she inches toward Katie in anger. At that moment, Katie tries to activate Bruce again, but this robot slips over Megan's lower half and falls over Gemma. Somehow, Gemma gets up and slams Megan's face with the other robot's head. Then, she dismantles Megan's facial structure, revealing the main components underneath. However, the persistent Megan gets up and strangles Gemma while the little girl stares at her aunt helplessly. But soon, Katie pierces Megan's mechanical brain with a screwdriver, supposedly killing the robot. As the movie ends, we see the police arrive in front of their house, along with Tess and Cole. The injured Gemma and Katie also come out of their house. But just then, the home AI activates on its own and turns towards them.